You've got to be shitting me. Guys, I want to apologize. I've had a great show for the last half hour. Where have you been? Thank you to the people that gave me a heads up on this. Asking me technical issues. I'm like, no, I'm doing a great job. Things are going great. I want to apologize and thank you guys for giving me a heads up here. I'm sitting here doing a whole show. I'm going back and forth between my stuff, and now I'm going to kind of start you over again. Holy Toledo. Thanks for giving me the heads up there, Janet. I'm a half a quart low already. And so I jumped on looking at this, though, and what's she talking about? How is that kind of whatever? And it says we're still waiting for you to go live. Meanwhile, I'm like, holy shit, I'm halfway through my show. I'm almost out of stuff. And meanwhile, people have been jumping on going, hey, Brandon, he's not starting yet. Typical him. Usually have other safeguards in place like, hey, dude, what are you doing? Yeah, I was starting to worry about that. Like, hey, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking fine. Like, whatever. Oh, yeah, now I got to start my whole time clock all over again. Hey, everybody. Medium Brandon Ross, thank you so much for joining me on the Energy Show. Yeah, I was wondering what was going on, too. I had to press play. That's what I needed to do. Let's talk about things at the top of the hour. Let's see what the heck's going on here. I'm going to pretend that I didn't just spend all this in the tank and I can recreate it right now because I'm a trained professional. Oh, my God. By the way, everybody around here in the studio, like the mice and everything, they're like all like, yeah, that was a good show. Good work. Good work, everybody. And then what's funny is that it would glitch from time to time, just like it did right there. And then I was like laughing. It's funny. We're going to talk about Mercury retrograde right now. By the way, Mercury retrograde can also come in the form of not hitting go live. Can we just laugh about this for crying out loud? Can we just have a good time about, these foolish things? By the way, I mean, it's not like, honestly, what was happening was I was sharing all the details of an inbound strike somewhere in Yemen or Chicago, some other place like that. I love my work. I just work a lot. All right, guys. Let's talk about the energy report right now. Let's talk about how Mercury retrograde is going to be going direct here by April 6th. So we've got about a week left here. But I want you to recognize that on the grander scale of things, Mercury retrograde is about kind of a disruptive, kind of an anti-hero kind of feel, right? Right? And I'm sorry, I'm really dry. 54 degrees up here today. Everything's starting to get dry. You think, oh, it's a fresh fallen coat of snow. And it turns out it's pollen, everybody. Clean your cars. It looks disgusting. Anyways, back to me. The energy report of what's going on right now astrologically is actually meant to kind of help us in a really personal way. And I want to kind of boil this down for you. This is a very kind of simple way to look at how this Mercury retrograde is going to help us in the long run and why it is that we're going to come out ahead in all of this. Let's not mince words. Donald Trump has an agenda in his mind. It's, first of all, not very well thought out. And second of all, it is very kind of how much money can I make where kind of feel to it, whether it's having Teslas on the front lawn, showing them off in a random car show of electric vehicles that he panned just 4 short years ago, or in the point of saying, hey, I'm going to just dismantle and disrupt everything. And by the way, when you have disruption and dismantling like this, when things like major earthquakes happen, like in Hong Kong or Bangkok or in the Philippines, one of the first things that could really help them is a little thing called U.S. aid that has been dismantled and otherwise destroyed. We have no viable way to get aid to those countries. Let that sink in for a second. So now you're going to shrug your shoulders and say, we're going to go through another way if we are to get the money. So he can bend, fold, and manipulate that so he can get what he wants from that part of the world. Pay close attention to this. When they get a package together to help the people of the Philippines and that general region from their 7.7 earthquake, it will go through some sort of phantom cloud that will somehow get distributed. Donald Trump has gotten away with virtually everything. The 7 deadly sins plus. And if you're like, what about murder? Just say, I would check Bedminster, the 16th hole, dig that up, do a little testy on that DNA, and go ahead and take a look to see whether she fell or it's all part of the inquiry that'll come when he gets to the pearly gates. I'd like to see it sooner than that, but pretty much that's the only thing that's going to keep him accountable here. Death and the passage through the needle. However, now we can look at Mercury retrograde from a personal standpoint. Now, some of you have kind of always hated retrogrades, no matter what they are. Well, I feel sympathy for you. If you use retrogrades the right way, it's actually a growth point for you. These two together between Mercury and Venus and having this kind of short window of about 3.5 weeks has given us a really good interplay to help us understand our value system and who we are. Now, it might come up in the form of an ex showing up again saying, hi, how you doing, in a drunk text somewhere. Or it could also be the review of that type of relationship and think that, well, in it, everything being equal, there were things that I liked about it and things that I should have improved upon. An intellectually established person will look at their challenges and their faults and look to improve upon them, but not think that it's all bad or it's all good. The conversation then, in turn, allows us to grow. Well, here's our challenge. What's happening during this Mercury retrograde, we're watching the wholesale dismantling of all things of our country. Donald Trump declared war on virtually every country he can almost spell and find on the map. However, it started with him declaring war on the Constitution in his first term. We got away with that by the skin of our teeth. We didn't hold people accountable, and now he's empowered and emboldened by that. What did we learn? What are we beginning to understand about ourselves that we need to change moving forward? Mercury retrograde is an opportunity for us to review this and say, it's a good idea. I just jot this down. We're the grown-ups. We're the adults in the room. We're the ones that are going to need to clean up this wholesale mess. And there are going to be things that are going to have irreparable damage, like, say, relationships with foreign countries or with immigration policies and affecting the lives of people that can't really be undone. And then there'll be other things that we can make sure never happen again. In World War II, when the atrocities happened to the Japanese and Chinese immigrants that were here in our country, legally, by the way, when they rounded them up and put them in internment camps because they were so sneaky, just like Pearl Harbor was a sneak attack, the attack that they learned about almost 48 hours beforehand, but they failed to actually tell the base to be prepared for it because then that way they wouldn't have shot down fighter planes or any of that other stuff, and it would have caused maximum damage, and then we would have been drawn into the war. You remember that one, right? Anyways, when we went through that and then villainized Japanese Americans, we learned some valuable lessons. And we made commitments along the way to never do this. And lo and behold, what we were doing with our immigration policy is exactly what we were railing against post-World War II to never let happen again. As a culture, we don't actually appreciate our ancestors the way that we should. We should be honoring Abraham Lincoln, but not because he was a great man, but because he had to make tough decisions and he stood by his guns. We shouldn't necessarily be worshiping John F. Kennedy for his moral and ethic value. But what we can do is say he wasn't afraid to stand up to the enemy and he knew who was right and wrong. He actually avoided World War III more than once. That can be honored. Both can be true. You can analyze great people and know that they were complex individuals. Abraham Lincoln literally chose to free slaves over the saving of the Native American population. He basically let them hang out to dry because he could only fight one battle in Congress. And the Native Americans were basically pushed to the edge of the continent because of the value system of freeing slaves. John F. Kennedy was choosing not to go to war, but then also not bowing down to the warmongers that would have made money with a good old-fashioned fight down there in Cuba and goading in the Russians to be like, hey, fine, you use your weapons, we'll use ours. There were people ready to make money on this, and JFK stood up and simply said no. He also had several affairs and well-documented situations that ended up getting a lot of people hurt. You can be a great man and a complicated man at the same time. Both can be true. Donald Trump, I'm having a hard time finding that fine line of duality where there's something of positive nature. And sometimes I caught myself saying, well, there is some good coming out of this. There's a difference between becoming the struggle and being the struggle. Becoming the struggle is taking something head on and saying you're going to change it. Creating the struggle, there's no good in that. The situation that is something that we need to overcome, but he is wholesale creating strife. He is wholesale pushing people off the continent as well as not freeing them at the same time. The way that you can really understand how a fascist government works is who they target. This government has, without merit, targeted the weakest of the weak by going after the Medicaid, by going after immigration, by going after children and youth programs through Department of Labor or Department of Education. Oh, and by the way, speaking of the Department of Labor, they are working to loosen up the child labor laws. You know, child labor laws that not only kept children safe, but also made them keep focus on school to say that there's certain limitations that you can do until you're of certain age. Well, they're looking to reduce all those restrictions so you can work in the field to replace the migrant workers that they're sending back. It's kind of been a plan. It's a loose-knit plan, but it was contrived in Project 2025. Project 2025 is a wholesale class war. It's not about women's rights. It's about not respecting women to begin with. There's a difference here, and those of us that have been calling it out for a while are ready for the change. Those of us that have been looking to make a difference, we recognize that things like our protests are starting to work. Our boycotts are starting to be felt. And our voices into Congress, our phone calls, our letters, our knock on the door, they're starting to pay off. Because the United States government is starting to crack. Once upon a time, we had this very kind of volatile, or at least I should say fragile, process of checks and balances. You know, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative. The judicial somehow got off the rails, and even though they were kind of polite, racist, and, you know, kind of counterculture class war folks, they still said, well, a right is a right. Until, of course, they were pushed in the final moment of the Donald Trump era. Take one. Legislature, however, has just kind of fallen off to the wayside altogether. Who's the highest bidder? How can I get ahead? Who can I stroke to make my million, go home and sit on my estate and do nothing? Or even better, get that cushy job on the other side of the White House so I don't have to ever deal with my constituents again. Welcome back, Elise Stefanik, you fucking bitch. I'm sorry, am I live? Okay, is that going out? I can't wait for your first town hall meeting. I will be there. You do not represent me anymore, though. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to bring some friends along. We actually want to understand what your thought process is in supporting Donald Trump if it wasn't for career advancement. And now that he's screwed you, how is your relationship with Donald Trump? Did you sleep with him because that's kind of part of the wholesale package? Or did you just have to kind of show him what it was like? He kind of has a type and you're kind of not it. You should have been blonder, prettier, and stupider. But instead you got 2 out of 3, which isn't bad. Good luck, Elise Stefanik. Welcome back to New York State. We'll be waiting for you. I'm sorry, did that go out? Is that here? Here we go, everybody. I want to talk a little bit today about the energy of this Mercury retrograde. Have you ever been challenged in your life? Have you ever faced your challenge head on and thought, I need to do this differently? Sometimes when we're challenged, things just completely fall apart. You know, like a relationship, a job, an opportunity. Are you kidding me? I am telling you somebody's in my system. I finally said it. I love it, Janet. I know you're being tongue-in-cheek. But I want to talk about a really cool thing. Who here has a great teacher that they've ever had? And when I say a teacher, I mean it could be an academic teacher. Maybe it's a grade school teacher that accepted you into a new school. Maybe it was a high school teacher that, taught you, gave you permission to write from your heart. Maybe it was a coach that let you believe in yourself and you improved along the way. Good. Or maybe it was a relative, someone that really kind of took you under their wing and helped you become who you are today. Well, I have a really cool project, and I want to bring you guys along. First of all, this is a teaser, and you're going to want to come back tomorrow and take a look at this week's Shuffle Up and Heal, because I'm going to have all the details in that. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the Amazing Teacher Project. Now, this is kind of a sketch art of what the cover is going to look like, and I want to tell you what it's going to be like to be involved with this. Now, it's a little bit of money up front, but when you get involved with this project, this is going to cover all the publishing costs and getting the book out there and all that other good stuff. But what you're going to receive is you're going to receive writing classes. Now, these are writing classes that will help you form your story into the best that it can be. You're also going to work directly with me to talk about how you can kind of put together your best kind of promo package about you being an author. And even if your ultimate goal isn't to become the great American author, this is still a great exercise in honoring your teachers. You'll also receive the poster. And again, this is kind of the mock-up of it. We're going to get the final draw here in a couple of days, couple of weeks. And you're going to be able to hang this and wear it and put it out there with pride to talk about how you were part of this project for your teacher. Oh, and did I tell you that we're going to be business partners too? Oh, yeah. By being part of this book, not only are you going to be invited to some of the book tour things that we're doing, you're going to be able to hang out with me in the booth, be able to be on boards, panels, and podcasts with me. And then you're also going to have an opportunity to earn royalties. You're actually going to become an earning author through all of this. Because unlike some companies out there that do these kind of lead author projects, they forget you in the dust once they get your writing. I know because I've been a part of it. So this is your chance to be part of a book and work with two best-selling Amazon authors, get your story out there about one of your teachers, and become a published author yourself. You're going to get invited to a whole bunch of other stuff for yourself, and it's a lot of fun. By the way, no greater way to help your legacy than to talk about your teachers. Those of you in my Conscious Becoming class understand why I said that, right? By the way, there's no age restriction in this, but you are going to be able to, you do need to be able to write cohesively and through thought, as we call it, and be able to honor your teacher. The stories themselves, the guidelines, all that other good stuff, I want you to come back tomorrow to the Shuffle Up and Heal, where I'm going to have all the sign-up info. But in the meantime, I want you to think about a great teacher, even if you don't do this project, even if you just want to kind of play along at home, think about a teacher that had helped you. Think about a teacher that had kind of nudged you along, and you wouldn't quite be the same if it wasn't for their influence. Those are the stories we want to learn about. All right, guys, back to the show here. We're going to talk about, this fucking guy. All right. Did you know April 2nd was Liberation Day? By the way, this is as far as I went in the first filming of this. I usually see boo and hiss whenever there's a presentation on that. And he is without a doubt a grifting salesman. Let's just call it what it is. His latest grift is to call it Liberation Day. Just repackage it. Don't call it Trump vodka. Call it success vodka. Don't call it Trump University. Call it whatever. Have Trump steaks. Have Trump. He just repackages shit and says it doesn't smell anymore. That is his thing, right? Well, Liberation Day is basically his land of all of these tariffs. Now, his target on the tariffs, you obviously know about Canada. You obviously know about Mexico and China. Let's not forget China. But he has somehow triangulated himself around Venezuela and added in tariffs of people that are friendly to Venezuela, like, say, the Brazilians or, say, the Argentinians, who are, by the way, peaceful trade partners with them. Take a page out of their book. Now, even though there's a dictatorial government there in Venezuela, most importantly, what they did is they stood up for themselves. And what Venezuela actually did about 8 years ago, 12 years ago, is exactly what Donald Trump is doing right now by saying, if you don't like me, we're going to charge you double. And then all of a sudden they say, well, we don't really like your government. We're going to work behind it. And nothing degrades a country like Venezuela like a bunch of dipshits on Signal. Just to let you know. Donald Trump's new idea and his prepackaging of tariff development is kind of like, thanks for coming. He's not going to say anything that is all that compelling. He's already sent J.D. Vance to go talk peacefully with the Greenlanders. He was there for 3 hours and couldn't set up another goddamn meeting because they just don't want to hear it. They're not engaging. They are gray rocking you, Donald Trump. And guess what? That's what's going to happen. Do you know what gray rocking is? Gray rocking is when you just don't engage with somebody. You just don't answer them. You don't respond to their messages, texts, whatever. You just basically cut them out of your life as if they weren't a part of it. That's what you do with narcissists. It's kind of a fun way to approach this, though, because think about it. Donald Trump is kind of a lifeline for a lot of people. Like, say, I don't know, the soon-to-be disgraced Elise Stefanik. I don't know if you know this or not, but I have a book, a YouTube channel. I travel the world. I can predict things. Elise Stefanik, welcome back. For now. I just want to ask her why. That's it. Hi, Elise. I was wondering, are you and Donald still on good terms? Did he burn the photos you sent to him? I don't know. Just kind of going down the path I meant to. Liberation Day. Oh, and by the way, shouldn't we just storm the Capitol? You know, like a couple of peaceful tourists and go ahead and take out officials left and right. Let's talk about these asshats of the year. Donald Trump is systematically and coherently bringing in people that are unqualified and otherwise not ready for the job, not ready for primetime players, which is fine at 11:30 on a Saturday night, you know, with the right amount of cocaine and craziness. Right, John Belushi? But we're not talking about an hour-long sitcom in the middle of the night. We're talking about our government. Pete Hegseth is a leader. A leader of what? I have no idea. But he's a leader. He's a leader of bullshit. And even without him putting together this incredibly insane crack team of people to share and brag shit to, which is basically what it was. It was a braggart's way of saying, we're number one and we couldn't be prouder. If you can't hear us, fist bump, American flag, boom. He took his now girlfriend or wife, I don't know what phase she's in, to work the other day. And she sat in on a highly classified meeting about bombs and people and the brown ones over there we got to get. Pete Hegseth is everything that you want in a white nationalist leader of an army. Alcoholic, slightly incompetent, hot wife, and sheer stupidity. Because he can get knocked off at any time because the fall of Rome didn't come from the outside. It came from within. That too, Brute? Pete Hegseth is the perfect fall guy. They're just picking and choosing. Now, those of you that don't know, the Signal chat, which actually talked about the bombing of a Yemen-sensitive site on March 15th, was basically leaked by being added to the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who was later blamed by everybody involved as in, like, he's a loser and he broke national security. And meanwhile, he raised his hand and he said, I didn't add me to the chat, dumbasses. But that's not good enough for them. They've got to find a fall guy. None of them can actually take accountability. But let's go ahead and talk about Michael Walls here for a second, who, by the way, is a sycophant kiss-ass of Donald Trump's for some time. His role is really about making sure that he added this said person onto it. And he's had every excuse under the sun. Well, you ever change names? You ever start to put in a number? You can remember the number, but not the name. And then you total bullshit. Total There is something about this that, whether it be by bump or by accident, nobody edited or audited this. And by the way, nowhere in the Constitution or under legal legislation oversight do they say you can use signal for our most sensitive, guarded elements. No, we have closed circuit. It was actually the invention of the internet that came about because we needed that sort of communication in real time in confidential closed caption. Signal was not on that. But the one feature that Signal does have is timed elimination of conversation. So if you do your best work out there on Signal, it goes away. It floats away. The fact that this got leaked and was a severe security breach is just the tip of the iceberg. You should really be asking yourself if the vice president and the defense director are on an erasable chat bot mechanism that won't have history, therefore won't have accountability. I appreciate the expediency of it all. And you know what? It's kind of cumbersome to make everything, secure. When you log into something and you have to type in your password again, all you got to do is, and it's just one more thing that you have to do, and it's a pain in the ass, and it's not very proficient. But at the same time, it's actually really kind of important that you kind of sew that up and don't let your neighbor see it. Yeah, it's there for a reason, assholes. The last but not least of eye-opening thing is how nonchalant they are about killing people. Bombs don't discriminate against children. And by the way, you can add women in that too, but I know that that's just a heartstring tug. Women are strong enough to put up with the shit now. They're done with it too. But children, they have no recourse here. There were 52 people killed on that bomb raid. Fist bump, American flag, boom. There were 98 people injured at various levels, from the most severe to the benign, like a broken arm, survivable things. 98. Fist bump, American flag, boom. This is what sociopaths look like. This is what people that are a slave in the devil card. They are bounded by whatever thing that they have committed to that they cannot break away from. Their ego, their drive for success, their worship of an antichrist. It's all right here, everybody. It's all right here. They have to make themselves feel good as they go through this unmasked weavery of deception and destruction. Oh, and by the way, do you know why we bomb them? We bomb them because, well, the Suez Canal. Because we had to secure other Suez canals. Because Donnie Boss told us that, you know what, every waterway's mine. You need to make that mine. That's mine, you know. Whiskey leaks, I love that. They're not centralized. They are not following orders. They're following minor directives. Oh, and by the way, Michael Walls, end quote. Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a really good guy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happened there. I'm sure that they're going to work it out. I mean, I don't know. Pete Hegseth, well, Pete has a lot on his plate right now. I mean, you can't really kind of get that out there, right? Also on this was Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was basically like, I can't who fucking talked about Yemen? I can't believe I'm saying Marco Rubio was like the fly in the ointment here, basically going, who the fuck talked about this? This was not part of the plan. When we were in a skiff and nobody could hear us. Right? I think we have to start to recognize, too, that J.D. Vance, although incredibly underqualified, is all about making sure that he positions himself to not only suck suck the chrome off of Donald Trump's Tesla, but then also understand that he's positioning himself to kind of be the strong badass with, kind of like quasi leadership qualities. This isn't what Daddy said. Daddy didn't say this. I think we need to tell Daddy. Again, and I'm strong with that. We have forces unseen acting upon us. By the way, another person on this text chain before we move on was Tulsi Gabbard. The Russian asset. The one who has direct ties to not only paying off her student loans, but then also has direct lines to the Kremlin and was calling people from the White House already in an unsecured phone to the Kremlin. They think they're playing games. But here's the hope. When Tulsi Gabbard was asked, did she use a personal phone on a personal application to talk about these things, she didn't answer, which tells me she at least knows it's wrong. There's two schools here. There's the one half of saying, you're goddamn right, I did, and I'd do it again if I had the chance. It's the Colonel Jessup can't be arrested mode. And then there's the Donald Trump. Deny, deny, deny. Every single person in the Trump cabinet is over their head. And by the way, I'm gonna pull for Marco Rubio for 2 seconds. Aside from being a neocon, he actually appreciates strategy and what's best for the country. I don't agree with the politics at all. J.D. Vance is basically a junior senator that rose up. And by the way, so was Obama. But understanding that J.D. Vance has changed the way the wind blows and can't get away from the couch area of the VIP room. He's just got some weird shit to him. Right? They really do look like a bunch of frat boys. But wait, there's more. There's cracks in the lines here. Earlier today, as we were going live, or as I thought I was going live, Anna Pauline Luna was actually resigning from the House of Representatives. She was once part of the Tea Party MAGA let's go get 'em fashion and co-sponsored a bill about protection relationship. It was shot down wholesale, and it was basically her and the Democrats that voted for it. She was then sanctioned by the Republican Party, and she said, I'm here to fight for my constituents. Her district in Florida is one of the highest for domestic abuses. This law would have actually given two things: one, federal funding, and two, expediency to get those funds to them if they need to leave in the middle of the night. She didn't stand up for her constituents, and now she's quitting because she doesn't want to play by the rules anymore, and she's realizing how divisive MAGA is. Maybe she should stay and just flip sides. But that's some sort of code of honor among thieves, isn't it? I'll just quit and go away, and then you guys can figure it out. Now, will this flip to a Democratic position? I don't know. I mean, the Republican representative just basically quit because they couldn't get through. Why do you think a Democrat would actually make it easier? But just ask Elise Stefanik what the politics are about elections and special elections and re-elections. They're scared. Our protests, our town halls, our boycotts are working. Keep going. Wait, there's more. What about the farmers? By the way, I just love this picture. This is on the internet. This is nobody special, I guess. But there's probably some package out there where this guy is doing some sort of like cosplay with this farmer shit. He's probably hanging off the back of the, the haymaker right there and kind of whatever. But the dissent is really in the breadbasket here. If any parts of the Mississippi and the tributaries that lead up to it have a farmer on it, they're probably pissed at Donald J. Trump because the farmers have been screwed sixfold. And by the way, ultimately, the American people are going to be screwed sixfold. By the way, my personal advice with all of this, plant a garden, get some tomatoes going, do some things that will be beneficial to you because it's not going to be at the grocery store, not without being tenfold in dollars, because there will be farmers that will survive and there'll be local farms that happen. But in the scheme of things, you're going to run into the problem of the subsidies actually going away. The things that made it affordable are now no longer there, so now they have to kind of make it up all in one shot. It's kind of how tariffs work. Farmers are getting screwed on three levels. First of all, by eliminating U.S. aid, which, by the way, was I forget what the percentage was. It was like 42% of everything that farmers were producing were going into U.S. aid. Well, when you take 42% of a fragile economy away from them, they're not going to be able to make it up. By the way, the other part of this was also being able to supply food to schools around the country. That was another, something like 20%. So now you're up to 60-something% and already taken away from the farmers. Last but not least, now you have the immigration issue where most of their workers are now gone. And, say what you will about fair labor or whatever. These were the people that were pulling your salads out of the ground. Now they are being deported or they're scared to show up to work. There is a sincere break in the economy. And by the way, in case you didn't notice, eggs are at about, $14 a dozen. That's almost $1 an egg, everybody. And by the way, I am not an official source on this, but they are going through the roof. Now, you can still find a 50-cent egg somewhere. It's probably because they have an agreement in place. They have to stay within a certain amount and all that other good stuff. But these tariffs are literally going to crush the farmers. They're going to basically turn this away. And what is the purpose of doing that? I mean, does one hand ever wash the other? If we had a Secretary of Health and Human Services worth a damn, they would have said, we kind of need the farmers. Can you not do that till we figure out another mode? Because what are you going to replace all of these vaccines with, all of these questionable items? Are you going to, did you ever think that the source of the reason why we need all of these, shots and all of these things that keep us from getting sick is because the food that we eat doesn't have a pure consistency enough, in that it's been so ingrown and so overgrown and so pesticide that we no longer actually get the true tomato when it hits our plate? Then it's some sort of bastardized version the size of our head. That's not how big tomatoes are supposed to be. But can we get to the point where we understand that the person in charge doesn't understand the word nuance, doesn't understand the effectability of it? They just create an enemy and go after the enemy. They don't think that the enemy might retaliate. They don't think that the enemy might actually have ripple effects on 7 other different things that go on. This is why we're in trouble. These are the things that we have to clean up. And as Mercury goes retrograde, I want you to remember this. Accountability comes with Mercury. Accountability comes when planets kind of change directions. Accountability or forced actions come in when things go, say, trine or things go, say, squared. Pay attention to these things because the farmers will absolutely be in the revolution side of this. How can you help? Buy local. Find a farm stand and tell 20 of your friends. Make it a point to make sure that they're sold out every Saturday. Make sure that they understand that they're being supported by you locally. They might not be subsidized anymore. And by the way, in upstate New York, our dairy farmers, some of our beef and cattle farmers, the heifers, if you will, are subsidized. But the local growers aren't. Go support them. Those are the ones that we're going to need because we're not going to be able to mass produce this stuff anymore. Right? Next path, I'm seeing path. Let's talk about the most scary thing in the news right now. Ramisa Ozturk is a Turkish citizen on a visa here in the United States. She's going to Tufts University. And by the way, I did not get into Tufts University. I don't think most of you can get into Tufts University. Not to say you're not the smartest people on earth, but you're not getting into kind of a high echelon school. Tufts is known for its public policy. It's known for its thought-provoking, policy-changing approach to both education as well as their graduate program. In other words, at 30 years old, Ramisa Ozturk has taken on a really big challenge. She is trying to change public policy and understand the nuances of how social change creates things like economic pull, understanding of quality of life, and being able to recognize that when there are changes on one end of the spectrum, how it affects the other. This is part of the work that she was doing in her PhD. She's currently in her dissertation phase. She was making her arguments for her dissertation in a few days. Was appended because she wrote an article, an op-ed piece for the Tufts University paper. Not even widely distributed. It was in a fucking newspaper on campus. Oh my God, we had almost 200 in circulation. Well, guess what? 85 of them were found in a trash bin 6 weeks after it was printed. I'm telling you, school newspapers are not a distribution channel, right? But she wrote a very eloquent and well thought out piece about the conflict in Palestine. Being Muslim herself, she was calling to arms the understanding that the United States has the unique position to quell this. She was calling on Tufts University to not back Israel, but to remain neutral. In other words, you don't have to pick my side, but don't support their side. For two reasons. It was very clear that Israel was an aggressor. Do not pile on Tufts University. Tufts University eventually took that kind of middle of the road and essentially said, although we have a great relationship with Israel and our Jewish counterparts, we fully embrace the idea that Palestine needs to have a ceasefire here, and Israel needs to recognize that they have caused a great deal of pain and set back the peace process. That was basically what they said, in part because she said, you don't have to love them. You don't have to love us, but don't love them, which means you're hating us. She changed policy at her own school, and it's that kind of voice and influence that's a direct threat. By the way, she's Muslim. Her faith kind of brought her as far as it has. Second, she's a woman. That doesn't cover up. Could you imagine that, JD? Anyways, she was a threat to the Trump administration for a whole host of reasons, but most of it, their sensibilities. How could a woman be so influential on a small side of this? The way that you can recognize a fascist regime is how they treat their weak. Ramisa Ozturk is strong, but she should be weak according to their standards, according to Project 2025, and she was anything but. Now, there's been protests and there's been arrests on Northeastern, in Minnesota University, Minnesota State, MU. There have been people that have been taken at Texas, at Tulane, in USC. There have been people that have been taken at Howard. There's several colleges that are under siege right now for exchange students that have been speaking their mind, protesting out. What makes her slightly unique is that the Turkish government is actually putting their money where their mouth is. Effective this morning, the Turkish government demanded that she either be released or have direct Turkish representation within 24 hours, or they will come and get her themselves. These are the kind of swords that are getting rattled now. And nobody can blame Turkey for doing this. Because after all, remember when Griner got held in Russia and we all of a sudden had to negotiate her out of it? We were ready to go get her in one way or another. Now, cooler heads prevailed, and 8-month, sentence was probably more than what it was worth. You can see the video that I did on Griner's detention. It was actually staring a very harsh moment in a critical time in the Trump administration where he tried to push it and just didn't value it. He had the cards if he can end the Ukrainian war in one day. By the way, we're currently at day 72 of the Trump administration, and the Ukraine war is still technically going on. But let's talk about the astrology here. let's wrap up strong here. One of the ways that we can really recognize a good chart is when you have all of these angles and you have these very important trines happening. Now, at the same time, and this is an approximate time, I think I'm off by about 6 minutes, give or take, but for the sake of this, we're kind of right on point. Mercury is actually going direct in the 9th house. So this is about lessons learned. Don't think so? How about this excellent trine energy, or I should say sextile energy, happening with Vesta, the great learner in the sky, the teacher, if you will. You also have this bended against the moon here in Leo. Now, what these two are going to kind of be in combination with is to present the idea that lessons are action. Democracy is a full contact sport. To be able to be the adverse of the adversaries is to love them. And even if it's never reciprocal in any way, shape, or form, it is about the duty of making sure that they have their freedoms and their representation. Mercury here being trine to the moon and then sextile to Vesta makes this a natural square for Vesta and the moon. Now, why would I point this out? These are lessons that should be learned about the things that we sit there and say, oh my gosh, that's a tragedy, somebody needs to do something, to the escape hatch of thoughts and prayers, I don't have to do anything with it. This is our opportunity to start to recognize that there are lessons here for us to learn, that we cannot abide by this aggressive action and these aggressions by a bunch of blowhards that have only one intention, and that is to create corruption and chaos everywhere they go. The other fun thing, and by the way, not this Friday, but next Friday, Penny and I are getting together. You're going to want to see that. It's at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 3 o'clock Central Europe Time. I had the wrong time on there, but you understand the time change and whatever. I screwed it up. Anyways, my fault. Penny pointed it out. You also have this very important conjunction with Chiron and the Sun. Now, the Sun is going to move across Chiron that entire weekend. And what that is going to mean for us is that there is a lot of personal healing going on, a lot of I am-isms, a lot of things of you standing in your own truth and saying, no, I'm not. This will also empower the people that are being oppressed to say, not today, Satan, not today. And we need to be very clear with our intentions with all of this. We're going to back them up if they get pushback. As a white male, I have a very important role in all of this. I need to let you know that if you're ever oppressed, either as a woman or somebody as a minority, LGBTQ, I don't care what your title is here. I see the picture of the White House. I see nothing but white, and I see 92% men, and then I see a couple of DEI hires and Tulsi Gabbard and Miss McMahon. Sorry, called it out. They're not qualified. They're not fucking qualified at all. Sorry, I get swearing. But I know that I have the fastidious responsibility to be able to stand up for those that can, or to stand up for those that are oppressed, whether they're children, whether they're minorities, whatever it is. I will not stand by this. If you're not familiar with the term scallywag, I highly encourage you to find it. What a scallywag was somebody during the Revolutionary War and then later on during the Civil War that would literally stand up in defense of slaves. They were the ones that said, don't beat them today. Don't hurt them. Don't whatever. They were the ones that would interrupt. They were the other white people that called out the other white slave owners and said, don't do that. I will be a scallywag. I will stand up for that. Do you know why? Because lessons have showed us, history has shown us, being a history buff all those years and reading all of those, books that I did about history and how things went and blah, blah, blah. I was empathetically kind of putting myself there to understand how our culture and our world was created, whether I was reading something on Jamestown or the American Revolution or whatever. But what I was actually doing was understanding what it was to stand up for the oppressed. What I was understanding was the idea that, when in times of Jamestown, before we actually became a formal incorporated country, England did a lot of shady things here. One of the things that they did was they rounded up throughout London primarily, but throughout the countryside. They collected them for almost 6 months. A bunch of women that were either widows, people that were malcontents, people that disobeyed their husbands, adulteresses, prostitutes, maybe, unwed mothers, all sorts of things. Well, they got together 19 of them, and they put them on a ship, and they sent them to Jamestown. They literally auctioned them off. But what they were auctioning them off for was just enough in supplies so that then that ship could turn around and go back. And some of the things that they gave them were things like, I don't know, an Indian or two. But they would give them food, they would give them some resources, and turn them around and send them. But what happened to those women is that they were integrated, and some of them still continued to rebel. And there was one man who actually purchased 3 women. His last name was Sulk, S-U-L-K, by the way, very much like Dr. Salk, who came up with the polio virus. Only it was spelled S-U-L-K, not S-A-L-K. And what he did is he purchased these women, and then he treated them very badly in front of everyone. He brought them together one day and said, I want to understand what you can bring to me. One of them was 16, and she was of childbearing age. There was another one that was 21, and actually had 2 children that had died from malaria or something, and lost her husband, so she was of no social value. And another one that was 22 was someone that was a woodworker. She was actually a blacksmith. And he treated them kind behind the scenes. He wasn't necessarily lovey-dovey with them, and he wasn't necessarily taking advantage of them. But he said, I'm going to be taking, this younger one as a wife. And by the way, before you get upset about 16 years old, if any of you look back in your lineage, you will find out that most people before 1800 were having kids well before they were 18. It's just the way it was. So it was a parlance at the time. And he treated each of them well, though. Behind the scenes, they were well fed. He asked them to do tasks. If they needed things, he got them. They got new dresses every other month. He actually made sure that they were treated well. And then one day, the oldest one that was very much the rebellion in all of it said, I don't get it. I can leave here anytime I want. Are you ever going to come after me? Are you going to beat me if you get me? He said, no, but I want to run with you. She said, what do you mean? He said, I lost my wife because of a disease, and the doctor didn't pay attention to her because I didn't pay him enough money. And because of that, he said, I made a lot of money in this trade. I'm actually kind of the centerpiece of a lot of things. And he made a proposal to them. And he said, listen, we have a child on the way. And when I say we, I mean we have a community here. I understand that if we go just a few miles north of here, there's a bay. And in that bay, there are, the crab and the fish just jump right out of it. I think I can make a very good living there, putting together a boating community, a fishing community. And I think that they got it wrong here. I think that there's too much in way of Native Americans. They don't respect them. It's only a matter of time before they attack them. They're able to kind of, we have to move. And then he said, but I'm not interested in moving with anyone else because I don't want anyone to know that I purchased you. I don't want anyone to know that this is anything different than, she is my wife and that you are our sisters. I don't want anyone else to know that we're a unit and you will help with the horses as a blacksmith and you will be a seamstress. And you will cook us our food. And she will raise the children and teach them how to help me in the field and on the boat. And the 3 of them didn't know what to do. And they moved to the Chesapeake Bay and they started their own community. The other 2 women actually married Native Americans. and they all lived together. Then when the other tribes found out that they were mixing races, they were all slaughtered. Because they had built up such a mistrust of the white man that there is no way that even with someone with the best of intention would have a good intention with marrying someone from the tribe. That's what we're up against. Can we actually make a peace offering because we were such assholes to begin with? Are we going to be able to go back into the way of saying, can we actually do this the right way? And we actually step forward in peace and not get our head chopped off? Are we going to be able to move ourselves in such a way that the good people are actually going to be in charge again? This is like the cross street of patience and urgency. I feel it. I know it. In the meantime, I want you to think about how this is going to look when we move forward. Everything Donald Trump is doing is unsustainable, both as a country and as a human. Everything. And he's staying just ahead of the tsunami as it comes on land. But he's going to trip. He's going to fall. He's going to push J.D. Vance behind him to block the water. He's going to push Tulsi Gabbard and Elon Musk behind him. He's going to survive in whatever way he can. And shouldn't the rest of the world hold us accountable? Yeah, there's going to be some pain. That's why we have to make it clear that to the rest of the world, to our Canadian friends, to our Mexican friends, to our Germans, to our Denmark, to Greenland, Panama, Turkey, Japan, even China. This ain't us. This ain't us. We're better than this. You just have to give us a chance. All right, guys, here's the hard tap. Tune in tomorrow. I want to hear about your amazing teachers. Get ready to talk about them. Maybe I'll do the reads on your amazing teachers. How do you like that? All right, guys. Sorry about the hiccup there. I had a great show before you guys came on. Keeps me from over talking, right? Heart taps, guys. Penny in a couple of weeks. Shuffle up and heal tomorrow. Let's keep going. We're not done yet.